Hey everybody, this is Claire, and this is Small Joyful Things. As always, I go to thrift stores or estate sales, or sometimes I buy things from Craigslist, and I'm always looking for things that I find interesting, or I think you guys would find interesting. And then I bring them home, try and find out as much as I can about them, and then I tell you guys about them. So, here's what I've got today. Put it out of the way. I have this lovely vase. Hopefully you can see the whole actual size and shape of it or whatever. It's a little bit of an odd shape. It has a very narrow neck and a very wide base, and the handles are rather unusual, I have to say. So let's just pop it down for a sec. My iPad is in danger of falling over. There we go. Right. So what I have here is a very nice porcelain vase. I bought it in a thrift store for $4. And basically I bought it because it's been hand painted, and it's been hand painted quite well as well. It was very, very dusty and dirty when I found it, but I picked it up, and damage to the gilt aside, I thought it was incredibly beautiful. Like, I suspect that it was probably part of a pair, but unfortunately we only have the one. And you can see where it's gotten this little kind of a colour. I think it's probably been airbrushed on, and then extra gilt on it, and it has this beautiful design of flowers. Like, this is a very kind of a classic kind of a bud vase, even though this is a very unusual shape, and the little arms are incredibly strange. I thought it was just so weird and interesting, and I thought this is definitely something I want to take a little bit more of a look at. We do actually have a mark, which is fantastic, but I'm going to try to measure it off first, if I can. It's really an odd shape. It is about 7 1/4 inches high, and at the widest part it is about just shy of 3.5 inches. It's round. If I put it under the camera, you should see it's basically round. There's no real kind of, like, these don't really stick out much, so that's really it. There we go. So what have we actually got? Obviously it's a bud vase. As far as I can tell, it's porcelain, and we do actually have a mark, and the mark definitely threw me for a while because I thought it would be easier to find out about, and clearly I only got it for $4 because they didn't really know what they had, and it's because it's very, very tricky to find out information. So what we have here, it says Weissman China, hand painted, and it has that little swirled W, there we go. So if you actually do a Google search for Weissman China, you get essentially a lot of stuff that's kind of similar to this, and no one really knows what it is, and everyone says, oh, it's vintage, or oh, it's early 20th century. No one really has any kind of clue. Okay, again, part of the problem of the internet is that it's very hard to kind of find a consensus if the general consensus is, we don't really know. Thankfully, in this case, I have a really good resource that I picked up a while back. I'm going to show you guys. Unfortunately, I had to put this on the floor because it's a very big book. This is Learner's Encyclopedia of US Marks on Pottery, Porcelain and Clay. This is, you can see, a book that's 1.5 inches thick, and it is literally nothing but a massive compendium of every possible pottery and porcelain and clay mark, basically of the 20th century, and even before that, of like anyone I could find, like mostly US as far as I can tell, but I have found some Canadian as well, North American pottery and porcelain and ceramic makers. It is just a massive, massive encyclopedia of marks. And thankfully, if I can somehow get this, because I'm bumping the camera now. Here we go. These marks look familiar. And sorry, the book is incredibly heavy, so I'm going to try and just, you can take a look at it there. Weissman China, hand painted, and that exact same W with the swirl. So what exactly is this? Now, you'd be surprised to know that the name of the company isn't actually Weisley, and unfortunately I can't quite turn the page properly, but you can see the little bit here. The Weissman Company Inc., New York, and East Palestine, Ohio. The Weissman Company Inc. There's their address. Trying to get to the top there. Yeah. So it was around for a while, went out of business July 1957 when Matt Weissman, the owner, died. Dwight Morris China, East Palestine, made products for Weissman China to sell. Besides being a selling agency, they were also listed as decorators of china and earthenware in 1952 and 54. Marks filed for the rights to mark, blah, blah, blah. And we have these 3 marks. So number 2 was found at Quality Stamp Company in East Liverpool, and probably one of the Dwight Morris China marks used in the products they made for Weissman. So that kind of gives us a nice chunk of information about kind of what this is and where it came from. The most interesting thing about it is that, like, this company clearly wasn't around for a very long time. At the latest is 1957, because obviously they went out of business after that. And the first mark was claiming uses, let's see, filed for the rights to Mark 1 on March 2nd, 1946 for use on blah, blah, blah. And they were claiming use since March of 1941. So that we have a kind of nice little band there, 1941 to 1957, just according to, like, the registration of the marks themselves. It's not fantastic, you know, but it's a good enough ballpark, mid-20th century. And the extra information here about Dwight Morris is kind of the interesting thing. Because I have seen this mentioned in a few places related to Weisley. Definitely someone else has access to this book, or has access to this information, has it listed with these. That, in fact, is accurate. Dwight Morris of Dwight Morris China made objects for Weissman to decorate, and then they sold. So if we skip back, here is the entry for Dwight Morris China. 1939 to 1982. And the plant operated from 41 to early 1982. Yeah, pretty good. So Dwight Morris, who's a nationally known porcelain designer and modeler, and he died December 1982. This is great. This is kind of just an interesting style, and he was obviously well known for his style. There's a few things here, like essentially what, you know, what he was into, and he did design for other companies. For years, Dwight Morris shipped more than 4,000 pieces of ware annually between blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there's a bunch of information here. I'm not going to read it all out. Essentially, this guy was incredibly prolific, designed for a lot of other different companies, and was a very successful maker of porcelain through the middle of the 20th century. And that essentially gives us the origin for this little thing. Like, made by Dwight Morris China, probably sometime in the 50s, kind of seems about right for the style. Possibly was a pair, but maybe not. We really can't really tell, and I can't find another example in this particular shape. This shape is entirely unique, but that's really good for, it's kind of really interesting, or at least it's good for our purposes. You know, we like, it's such an interesting design. Clearly it was made by someone who was an artist and who was known as a porcelain designer. But yeah, that's pretty good. So now we have, like, the bounds. It's got to be like it's going to be before 1957, because that's when Weissman went out of business, and probably after 1941. And that's obviously the same date as in the other one. So that's about as good enough. That's good enough for our purposes. We're not going to go back as far as 1939. Yeah. Interesting thing that they actually were working during the Second World War. You'd think that, like, porcelain wouldn't be so big of a deal, like, during the war itself. Just gotta put that back on the floor. But yeah, there you go. Really interesting. Now, I did take a quick look around to see what kind of market is there for this, and basically because no one really knows anything about it, or, you know, the internet consensus can't really decide what it's worth. Like, I bought this for $4. It's probably worth maybe $15 to $20 at most for people who are kind of into, like, the 1950s look, the vintage look. Not a huge market, unfortunately. There's not many pieces out there. Like, and it's not unusual, to be honest. It doesn't look like Weissman are actually in business for very long. Like 1941 up to 1957, that's not a whole lot of time. It's only like 16 years, and it's been obviously quite a while since then. So this is kind of an interesting little thing. It'll probably go up on Etsy at some point, you know, $15, $20. Maybe someone will like the style of it. And again, it is very unusual. Like, very nicely painted, I have to say. And we are lucky that it is in fabulous condition. There are obviously some issues with the gilt here being a little bit worn, and a very tiny little bit there as well. But otherwise, it is in perfect shape. It's remarkable it survived so well. It survived with only a very slight little loss of the gilt. That's, you know, not bad for something that's, what, more than 70 years old, most likely? Yeah. Are you going to stay? You're going to, okay. Don't. Okay. Okay, well, here you go. This is my small joyful thing for the day. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Bye-bye.